My name is Nora James, and I'm 34 years old. 4 days ago, the man I've loved for 5 years looked me in the eye and told me I didn't match his lifestyle, that sometimes he was embarrassed to introduce me to people. That sentence didn't just land, it rearranged something in me. If you'd asked me a year ago to describe my life, I would have said it was fine. Not glamorous, not tragic, just steady, in a way I'd worked hard for. I'm a nonprofit grant writer. I help organizations find the funding they need to keep shelters open, to feed hungry kids, to keep art programs alive in schools. The pay isn't great, $58,000 a year, but it's stable, and it feels like it matters. My husband, Miles Weston, has a very different life. He's in luxury real estate, the kind of job where your phone never really stops buzzing, where just one more client dinner can mean you're not home until midnight. He dresses the part. Tailored suits, polished shoes, watches that cost more than the entire outfit I'm wearing. As I'm telling you this, we've been together for 5 years, living together for 3. We split the rent and utilities proportionally based on income and share one joint checking account for household bills. Everything else we've kept mostly separate. It worked, or at least I thought it did. Miles's family is wealthy, not jet-owning billionaires, but wealthy. His dad, Richard, owns an investment firm. His mom, Meredith, is a socialite who comes from old money the way some people come from small towns. It's just part of her. They host charity galas and wine tastings and have opinions about art galleries I've never heard of. From day one, they've been polite to me. Richard always asks how the charity work is going, like it's a quaint hobby. Meredith compliments my dresses in a way that makes me feel like she's grading them. No one has said outright, "You're not good enough for our son." But there's this persistent undercurrent, this tiny drop of disappointment in every interaction that I can't unfeel. Still, I honestly believed Miles and I were solid. We argued about normal things, whose turn it was to clean the bathroom, whether he could stop scrolling email at the dinner table. But there was affection underneath. Inside jokes, shared grocery lists, his head on my lap on Sunday afternoons while we watched bad TV. About 8 months ago, things started to shift. It was small at first, a comment about my car. "Don't you ever get tired of that thing?" he asked one morning, jingling his keys while I hunted for my travel mug. "It's 10 years old now?" 10-year-old Toyota, I said, "and it still starts, which is more than I can say for me before coffee." He laughed, but there was an edge to it. "I'm just saying you could upgrade. You've been writing grants long enough. Don't you want more what?" I almost asked. "More debt. More pretending." Instead, I changed the subject. Then it was my clothes. "You know my colleagues' wives all dress a certain way at events," he said while we were getting ready for one of his open house mixers. "You might feel better in something a bit more elevated." I looked down at my perfectly fine black dress. Elevated how? I don't know. Less a mall. The word landed like a slap. I kept my voice steady. "You realize the mall is where most normal humans shop, right?" He sighed like I was missing the point. "I'm just thinking about impressions." And then slowly the comments started stacking on top of each other until they formed something heavier than either of us wanted to name. "Don't you want to advance? Maybe start your own agency. Are you really okay making that salary forever? My colleagues, partners, all have real careers." Real careers. I tried to brush it off as stress. The pressure of the housing market quotas, whatever drives luxury agents toward ulcers. But every time he looked at my car or my shoes or my basic cardigan, there was this flicker in his eyes, something between disappointment and calculation. Last Tuesday night, it stopped being subtle. We were in bed, the lights off except for the soft glow of his phone. He was scrolling through Instagram, watching stories from some industry conference in Miami. People in designer clothes on rooftop bars. I was next to him reading a book. He let out a little laugh at something on his screen, then suddenly said, "You know what? I need to be honest with you." I closed my book on my thumb. "Okay." He didn't look at me, just kept scrolling. "You don't really match my lifestyle anymore." It took a second for the words to arrange themselves into meaning. "Excuse me." At these events, when people ask about my wife, I have to explain that you work for nonprofits. He finally set his phone down, turning toward me. "Do you know how that sounds, Nora? Like I'm not ambitious enough. Like I settled." There was a buzzing in my ears. "You think being with me makes you look like you settled?" "It's not just the job." He rushed on like he could fix it by adding more words. "It's everything. The car, the clothes, the way you don't care about networking or climbing. Sometimes I'm embarrassed to introduce you in those circles. You know how some moments feel like they split your life into before and after? That was one of them." I stared at him. "So what exactly are you saying?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "My parents ask why we aren't buying a bigger place, why we don't vacation in St. Bart's, why we're not further along. What am I supposed to tell them, that my wife is perfectly content being a grant writer forever? You could tell them I love what I do," I said quietly. You could tell them I contribute to our household. You could tell them we live within our means and don't confuse debt with success." His jaw tightened. "You're being defensive." "Am I?" I asked. "Or did you just tell me I'm an embarrassment to you?" He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. Someone had to say it. I didn't trust myself to speak after that. I turned off my lamp and lay there in the dark, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. He fell asleep eventually. His breathing evened out. I stayed awake staring at the faint crack in the ceiling paint, replaying every comment he'd made in the past 8 months. Like a montage I hadn't realized I was starring in. Something about his tone that night, the sharpness, the weird defensiveness nagged at me. It wasn't just cruelty, it felt protective, but not of me, like he was guarding something. The next morning, Wednesday, he was up early to catch a flight for a showing out of state. He kissed my cheek in the kitchen like nothing had happened, like he hadn't peeled back my skin the night before and called what he saw underneath embarrassing. "Back Friday?" he said, grabbing his suitcase. "Don't forget my family's coming for dinner Saturday. My dad's really looking forward to it." I imagined Richard asking polite questions across our dining table, Meredith's eyes scanning our modest apartment like it was a before picture. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt different. Not empty. Exposed. I stared at the joint checking account app on my phone for a long minute before opening my laptop instead. Miles handled most of the big picture money stuff. He liked spreadsheets and projections. I trusted him. We split things. We paid our bills. Nothing bounced. But trust and ignorance are cousins, and Tuesday night had made me suspicious of both. I sat at the kitchen table, logged into our joint account, and pulled up the last year of statements. At first it was boring. Rent, utilities, groceries, streaming services. Then about 8 months ago, right around when the comments started, there was a pattern. Transfers from our joint account to another account listed under his name only. Large ones. 1,200 here, 1,200 in here, 200 to 1 in here's. 2,500 there. Sometimes twice in the same week. Almost always labeled something vague like household or maintenance. My stomach tightened. We hadn't had any big repairs. No new appliances, no surprise medical bills. I clicked through more months, more transfers, more vague notes. On top of that, there were frequent cash withdrawals, 500 to 500, 500, 800 just floating out into the ether with no explanation I could see. I called the bank. After verifying my identity and the joint account details, I asked as calmly as I could whether there was another account linked to Miles's name. "Yes," the representative said. "There's a personal checking account." "I'm not on that one," I said. "No, ma'am." "Can you tell me anything about it?" "I can only confirm that it exists." Which was fair. Infuriating, but fair. I hung up and went hunting. In Miles's home office, everything was too neat. Labeled folders, perfectly arranged pens. His laptop was password protected, but he's predictable. His passwords are always some variation of his favorite football team. And a year. It took me 3 tries. On his desktop, there was a folder called Financial Planning. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were spreadsheets. At first glance, they looked legitimate. Charts formulas, tidy rows of numbers. Then my brain caught up. According to Miles's spreadsheet, I made 115,000 tauin a year. In reality, I make 15,000 a year. In reality, I make 1,000 a year. In reality, make 58,000. The file also claimed we had 250,000 tion in savings. Our actual savings, across everything I knew about, was just under 250,000 now ours in savings. Our actual savings across everything I knew about was just under 150 other in savings. Our actual savings across everything I knew about was just under 30,000. There were investment properties listed that we did not own, stocks I'd never heard of. At the bottom of one page in his handwriting was a neat little note for Mom and Dad review. My throat went dry. He wasn't just lying to his family, he was using me as part of the lie, inflating my income so I wouldn't look like the anchor weighing him down. He had listed my job title not as grant writer, but as strategic consultant. In a drawer, I found receipts that explained where some of the missing money had gone. A 4,500 watch, 500 watch, 500 watch, 900 shoes, tabs from restaurants where I'd never eaten with him, spa packages, salon visits that cost more than my car insurance. I took photos of everything, spreadsheets, receipts, bank statements, every transfer, every fake number. My grant writer brain cataloged it automatically, filing it away as if this were some twisted application I might need to reference later. By the time I closed his laptop, my initial hurt had hardened into something clearer. I thought about the way he'd said "my lifestyle" the night before, like it was a country club membership I'd failed to qualify for, about his insistence that someone needed to tell me how embarrassing I was. He wasn't just ashamed of me, he was ashamed of the truth. Saturday night, his family would be sitting at our dining table, drinking wine and complimenting the food while asking polite questions about our life. Miles would be expecting me to smile and play my part in the fiction he'd built. I rinsed my coffee mug, set it in the sink, and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked tired, and for the first time in a long time, I also looked done. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew this much: I wasn't going to be his lie anymore. Saturday came faster than I thought it would. By late afternoon, the apartment looked like a home decor catalog version of itself. Miles had insisted on fresh flowers, white lilies, and eucalyptus in a glass vase. He'd ironed the linen napkins his mother had given us last Christmas. I moved around the kitchen on autopilot, basting the chicken, checking the potatoes. Every time I caught my reflection in the oven door, I had the same thought: you are about to set off a bomb in this room. "Babe, did you see what I did with the place cards?" Miles called from the dining area. I stepped out and saw he'd actually printed little name cards on cardstock. Richard, Meredith, Lucas, Chloe, Aunt Grace, Uncle Bill, Nora, Miles, and arranged them around the table like we were hosting a gala. I raised an eyebrow. "Assigned seating, huh? It just looks more put together." He straightened one card that was already perfectly straight. "My mom notices details." "I'm aware," I said. He studied me for a second. "You okay? You've been quiet." "Just thinking about whether the chicken will be dry." He came up behind me and put his hands on my shoulders. "You're going to be great tonight, okay? Just let me handle most of the talking when it comes to work stuff. My dad can get intense." Something in my chest went cold. "Sure," I said lightly. "Whatever you want." The buzzer rang at 5:03 p.m. By 5:20, our small apartment was full of expensive fragrances and polite laughter. Richard and Meredith arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine with a label I recognized only because it cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Lucas and Chloe came next. Aunt Grace and Uncle Bill followed. Meredith air-kissed my cheek. "Oh, Nora, the place looks lovely," she said, glancing around. "So, cozy." Cozy. The wealthy person's word for small. "Thank you," I said. "Wine." Richard shook my hand, his grip firm. "How's the writing going?" he asked. Same as always, like he couldn't quite remember if it was a job or a hobby. "Busy," I said. "We just secured funding for a new youth shelter. It's been rewarding." "That's nice," he said, already turning to Miles. "We were just talking about your last quarter numbers. Impressive stuff, son." Miles smiled, that polished, client-ready smile. "Trying to keep up, Dad." We moved into small talk. By 6:30, we were seated at the table. The candlelight softened, everything turned our modest dining room into something almost cinematic. If you didn't know better, you'd think this was just a nice family dinner. Miles certainly did. He was in full performance mode. I watched him for a moment, feeling strangely detached, like I was watching a stranger play my husband in a reenactment. Halfway through the meal, Richard dabbed his mouth with his napkin and turned to me. "So, Nora," he said in that genial tone he uses when he's about to ask something less than casual. "How's your consulting work going?" The room seemed to tilt. "My what?" I asked. "Your consulting," he repeated, oblivious to the way Miles's hand froze mid-reach for the salad bowl. "The advisory work you're doing for other nonprofits. The projections you two showed us last month were impressive. Almost 6 figures combined, wasn't it?" He looked at Meredith, who nodded. I let the silence stretch for a beat. Across the table, Miles's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His knuckles were white around the handle. Meredith smiled at me, waiting. "Yes, we were so pleased to hear how well you're doing," she said. "All that hard work paying off." I set my own fork down carefully. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out calm. "I don't do consulting," I said. Meredith blinked. "I'm sorry. I don't have any advisory contracts," I said, keeping my eyes on Richard. "I work as a grant writer. I make $58,000 a year. That's it." The room went very quiet. Miles swallowed. "Nora," I didn't look at him. "I'm not sure what numbers you were shown," I continued, "but they weren't the truth." Richard's brow furrowed. "Miles showed us spreadsheets," he said. "Income projections, assets. He said you'd started taking on additional work. Strategic consulting, I think he called it. And that between that and his commissions, you were both doing extremely well." Chloe's eyes flicked between us. Lucas leaned back in his chair, suddenly very alert. "Nora," Meredith said slowly, "what are you saying?" I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and scrolled to the album I'd created. My hands were steady now. I felt oddly clear. "I'm saying Miles has been lying to you," I said. Miles's fork slipped from his fingers and clattered against his plate. The sound made everyone jump. "Seriously," he hissed under his breath. "What are you doing?" I ignored him and turned my phone toward Richard. On the screen was a photo of one of the spreadsheets from Miles's financial planning folder. In neat columns, it showed my supposed $115,000 salary, our imaginary, Zamro's salary, our imaginary, Zamro's salary, our imaginary, $250,000 in savings, and a list of investment properties that did not exist. At the bottom, in Miles's handwriting, were the words, "For Mom and Dad review." Richard took the phone, his jaw tightening as he zoomed in. Meredith leaned in over his shoulder. "This is what you saw, I'm guessing," I asked, "because none of it is real." "Nora, stop," Miles said sharply. There was a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. "You're making this sound worse than it is." "How much worse could it be?" Lucas asked quietly. I swiped to the next photo before Richard could answer. Bank statements, transfers, cash withdrawals, the dates and amounts lined up like a confession. "For the past 8 months," I said, my voice still remarkably calm, "Miles has been transferring money from our joint account into a personal account in his name. Thousands of dollars, always labeled something vague like maintenance or household. At the same time, he's been telling me I'm an embarrassment to his lifestyle because I drive a 10-year-old Toyota." Meredith made a small, strangled sound. "Miles." Richard's voice had lost all warmth. "Is this true?" Miles's eyes darted around the table, landing on everyone except me. I moved some money. Yes," he said. "For things we needed. For appearances. You all know how important image is in luxury real estate." Richard scrolled through the photos, his face growing darker with each swipe. "A $4,500 watch," he read. "Shoes, restaurants. I've never even heard of you taking clients to—" "That's client stuff," Miles said quickly. "You have to look successful. It's part of the job." Chloe spoke up for the first time. "You told us the firm was covering those dinners." Miles's mouth opened, then closed. Aunt Grace shifted in her chair, suddenly very interested in her green beans. Meredith looked at me, something like horror dawning in her eyes. "How much?" she asked hoarsely. "How much has he taken from the joint account?" I answered before Miles could spin it. "A little over $32,000, I said. "All from money that was supposed to go toward rent utilities and savings." The number hung in the air like a bad smell. Lucas let out a low whistle. "Wow," he said. That's a lot more than some money." Miles slammed his hand down on the table, making the plates rattle. "You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under," he snapped. "Every time we get together, it's, 'How's the job? How's the bonus? When are you buying a bigger place?' You think that doesn't get to me?" "We ask because we're interested," Meredith said, her voice trembling. "Not because we expect you to lie to us?" "You don't get it," he insisted. "I see Lucas with his promotion. I hear about cousins with their surgeon husbands, and then there's me bringing home the grant writer wife who drives a beater and doesn't care what she looks like at events." The words hung there. Grant writer wife, like it was an insult, a punchline. "Just to be clear," I said quietly, "you forged spreadsheets and stole from our joint account because you were embarrassed that I love my job and live within my means." He turned on me. "This isn't just about you. It seems pretty centered around me," I said. "You inflated my income, Miles. You didn't just make yourself look good, you made me into someone more acceptable to them." I nodded toward Richard and Meredith, who were both staring at their son like he'd become someone they didn't recognize. Richard slid my phone back across the table. His face was carefully controlled, but I could see the anger in the tight set of his jaw. "Is all of this accurate?" he asked me, not Miles. "Yes," I said. "I have the original files. The bank confirmed the personal account in his name." Meredith pressed her fingers to her temple. "Miles," she whispered. "How could you—" He looked between us wild-eyed. "You don't understand what it's like needing to prove you didn't settle. Everyone assumed I'd end up with someone in my circle, someone like Vanessa." My chest tightened. Vanessa, his ex, the one who married an attorney and moved into a penthouse. "I needed you to see that I hadn't made a mistake," he muttered. "By turning Nora into a fictional version of herself," Lucas asked. "By stealing, that's how you prove you're successful. No one asked you to maintain an image." Richard said, his voice like ice. "We certainly didn't ask you to falsify documents." "You didn't have to," Miles muttered. "I could feel it every time you looked at her." Meredith flinched, shame flickering across her features. Silence settled over the table again, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Richard pushed his chair back and stood. "How much exactly?" he asked. "I want a precise number taken from the joint account, and I want to know how you're going to pay it back." Miles stared up at him. "Dad," and Richard added, turning to me, "I want to know what you intend to do about this relationship." Everyone's eyes swung to me. For the first time, I felt every gaze shift, not judging me, but waiting, as if somehow I was the one with the final say. "I don't know yet," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "But I know I'm not going to make any decisions based on embarrassment or pressure or someone else's expectations." Meredith nodded slowly. Miles opened his mouth, but Richard cut him off. "We're done for tonight," he said to his son. "You will call me tomorrow morning, early." The family left in a strange, disjointed procession. Miles shut the door behind them. For a moment, we stood there in the silence of our tidy candlelit dining room. Then he turned to me. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "It was the truth," I said. "You humiliated me in front of my entire family." "No," I said softly. "You did that. I just stopped helping you hide it." He paced hands on his head. "You don't get it, the pressure I'm under." "I'm sorry," I said gently. "But you don't get to use your anxiety as a reason to take money-forged documents and blame me for not being impressive enough." He stopped pacing. His face crumpled. Then he retreated into the bedroom and slammed the door. The next morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table staring at his coffee. "Nora," he said finally, "I'm sorry. For the lies. For the money. For saying those things about your job." He sounded worn. "I was spiraling. About work. About Vanessa. Everyone's moving up and I feel like I'm stuck. And then you're content. And I didn't understand how you could just be okay with staying where you are." "Because where I am is meaningful," I said. "I know," he whispered. "I know that now." He rubbed his hands over his face. "My dad called. He wants me to meet with a therapist. He said what I did was financial misconduct." I didn't respond. "I want to fix this," he said. "I found a couples therapist, Dr. Collins. Will you go with me?" "Why?" I asked. "Because I don't want to lose you." "I need to know," I said softly, "whether you want me or whether you want the version of me you presented to your parents." He shook his head. "I want you, I swear." I didn't believe him, not yet, but I agreed to go to one session. Therapy was revealing. Dr. Collins asked, "Why did you do those things?" Miles hesitated. "Because I felt like I wasn't enough, and I felt like Nora wasn't enough, and that made me feel ashamed, so I tried to cover it up." The room went silent. Dr. Collins nodded. "Oh, what made you feel that way?" "My family," Miles admitted. "Seeing Vanessa marry well, and when I brought Nora home, I felt like I had to prove something, that I hadn't settled, that she wasn't below me." The words hit like a cold wave. Dr. Collins turned to me. "How did hearing that feel?" "It felt like he valued the idea of me more than the reality of me," I said. Miles stuck to therapy. He filled out worksheets about shame and status. He made a color-coded budget tracking every dollar. He sold the $4,500 watch. He returned every dollar he could to the joint account. Richard and Meredith changed too. They invited me to dinner without Miles. They asked about my grant writing without condescension. And slowly, Miles started rebuilding something that looked like self-worth. Not borrowed, not inflated. Real. 5 months after the dinner incident, I came home to find something unusual waiting in our kitchen. Candles. Plates set. And in the center, chilling in a bucket of ice, was a bottle of champagne. Miles stepped out, looking nervous. "What's all this?" I asked. "A proper celebration," he said. "For your job. For the funding you secured last week. The one I should have celebrated months ago." He poured 2 glasses. "To you," he said. "To your hard work. To everything you earned. I'm proud of you, Nora." We clinked glasses. It tasted like growth. Like healing. Like a second chance neither of us were certain we'd earn. We live in a world that is obsessed with the package. The right job, the right car, the right zip code. And sometimes we let that obsession bleed into our relationships until we start treating our partners like accessories instead of people. Miles fell into the trap of believing that his net worth was his self-worth. And because I didn't help inflate that number, he decided I was a liability. Financial infidelity is rarely just about money. It's about power control and shame. Miles stole from our future to pay for a fantasy version of the present because he couldn't sit with the discomfort of being ordinary. But here's the truth I want you to take away. You do not need to be impressive to be worthy of love. You do not need to be a strategic consultant or drive a luxury car to deserve a seat at the table. Your value is inherent, not performative. It took blowing up our life to find the foundation, but we found it. And it wasn't built on lies or spreadsheets or Richard's approval. It was built on the hard, messy work of honesty. If you are with someone who makes you feel like a before picture, who hides you or who tries to edit your life to fit their aesthetic, don't wait for a dinner party to speak up. Your reality is enough. You are enough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve the view. Thank you for listening to Nora James's story. Until next time, stay true to your own value.